to pop up. And for everyone else joining us, if you have any questions, please feel free and post it up in that Q&A box. I'll be monitoring it throughout, and then I'll come back towards the latter end of this webinar, and we'll go through the Q&A session with Katie and Shreya after the initial presentation. So Michelle, the floor is yours. All right.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. And we are also really excited to be able to partner with the city just to share the information about the program that they have that's available. And so I am going to introduce Katie Balderas and Shreya Sharan from the City of Long Beach Office of the City Manager and the Office of Equity. So I know that they both program and share that with you, and then with any follow-up that you may have or questions. But for now, we're going to have Katie Shreya present and then we're going to hold all the questions to the end so we have a good walkthrough and an idea of where we're at, and then we'll get as many questions as we can answered. So then the things that we aren't able to answer live, then we'll go ahead and send those to the city, and they will be able to provide hopefully some answers to some of those questions or provide direct answers to you as well. So we will also be following up with some links and to all of the things that are being mentioned today. So you can look forward to that in your email as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you for your partnership with the nonprofit partnership. Michelle and I met about a year ago as we were conceiving this program, and have had a lot of conversations since then, and are really excited to have you all participating today. My name is Katie Balderas, and I'm the Equity Officer for the City of Long Beach. And up until about a month ago, I was with the Department of Health and Human Services. And then over the summer and with the beginning of the new fiscal year, I've moved to the City Manager's office, where the Office of Equity now lives. And I'll let Shreya introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shreya, as we mentioned. I am a policy and program specialist with the Office of Equity, and I will be working on the Cannabis Reinvestment Program long term. So if you guys decide to come on board, I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Shreya. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully I'll be able to see the slides. How's that? Can you see the slides? Can I get a thumbs up, Shreya? Yeah? Okay, cool. Thanks. Okay, great. So, well, today we're planning to introduce you to the Cannabis Reinvestment Program, but I just wanted to take a step back and share a little bit about what we mean when we talk about cannabis equity. And so the Cannabis Equity Program strives to address the long-term impacts of federal and state cannabis enforcement policies on Black communities and communities of color. And throughout today's presentation, we'll refer to this as the war on drugs, and I'll talk about that in a minute.
Katie, can I ask you to pause just 1 second? Because we're seeing the slides with the notes. So I know that there was a different sharing setting that you wanted to pop up for that. So if you wanted to reset it, we can do that. Thank you.
I certainly will. Let's try that. How does that look now?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay. It always works in the dry run, and then when you are recording, it gives you troubles. Thanks for pointing that out. So the Cannabis Reinvestment Program is part of the overall cannabis equity strategy, which includes providing support for potential business owners and entrepreneurs to open cannabis businesses. And this is done through ways that we've tried to reduce the barriers to entry. This is an area that's very challenging just because we can't control the cost of real estate. And it is an area that we certainly want to work to improve through other mechanisms. We also have a program where we are focused on providing employment opportunities in the cannabis business through our workforce arm of the City of Long Beach. Our city prosecutor's office has also worked to ensure that cannabis records no longer exist on anybody's criminal record to the extent that we have control to fix that in Long Beach. So he's been focused on making sure that we are expunging all of those records in alignment with state law. But this piece that we'll be talking about today is community reinvestment. And this was directed by Long Beach City Council in 2018 to really focus the intention on repairing the harm caused by the war on drugs. And so this is the piece that we'll be diving into a little bit deeper today. So I know many of you are familiar with the term equity, but I just wanted to provide a little bit of a definition that we often use in the city as we're describing it. We believe that equity differs from equality, in which everyone has the same amount of resources despite their needs or assets. So in other words, you know, as this picture shows, whether you're 2 feet tall or 6 feet tall, you still get the same bike with equality. Whereas equity is about getting, each of us getting what we need to survive or to thrive, things like access to opportunity, to networks, resources, and supports based on where we are and where we want to go, with the understanding that where we're starting from often differs based on our background and identity, including things like race and ethnicity. So using an equity lens for us means that the city is using data about communities to drive our engagement, and specifically engaging those who are most impacted by issues in the decision-making process. We are wanting to better understand who is benefiting from a policy, program, or initiative, and who could be burdened by the decision. And we also want to work to make sure we're addressing and preventing any unintended consequences that could potentially harm communities that have long been harmed. And so this leads us into talking about the war on drugs. So you can see from this graph here that in 1971, the war on drugs was launched, and it led to profoundly unequal outcomes in Black and Latinx communities, with higher arrest and incarceration rates for these communities, even though drug use was very much similar across different racial and ethnic groups. It really had a lot to do with law enforcement's focus on lower income communities and communities of color, with the tools of mass incarceration there to use to punish those who were convicted of using drugs. And so this is a big reason that we see the rates of mass incarceration disproportionately affecting Black and Brown communities. And we know that this isn't just, this is something that has also specifically happened in Long Beach as well. And so what this graph shows, this is from a $1 Million Hoods report on cannabis in Long Beach. We know that Black people were largely burdened with arrest and incarceration. So even though our Black residents only make up about 13% of the population, they accounted for 44% of cannabis-related arrests between 2010 and 2016. We also know that our Latinx community was also affected as well, although not as quite as disproportionate as our Black community. And so as we're talking about the war on drugs, it's really important that we bring this racial equity lens to this program. It's also important to note that even though I mentioned cannabis use is relatively equal among racial groups, we also can see that there were certain geographic areas that had disproportionate cannabis arrests. And so you see the zip codes on this map that are indicated in red are the ones where we saw the highest rates of cannabis-related arrests in North, Central, and West Long Beach. And so these are often the communities that we know suffer from cumulative disadvantage, including things like poverty and lack of access to other opportunities. And so as we're thinking about cannabis equity, one of the important pieces is looking at who's benefiting from the legalization of cannabis and the fact that we can sell a cannabis for adult use as well as medical use. And when you look at who the owners in the cannabis industry include by race, you can see that disproportionately that ownership is belonging to white owners. And so just as we've walked through this, you can see that the disproportionate harm has been caused to Black and Brown communities while we're now experiencing disproportionate benefit to white folks. And so this is part of what we're trying to correct with cannabis equity. And we know we're not going to get it perfect, which is why we're looking forward to getting some questions and feedback here today about how we can start to reinvest in these communities most harmed. So I'm going to turn it over to Shreya to talk a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of how this program will work.
Alrighty, yeah, thank you, Katie. So Katie just walked us through kind of the rationale of the program, and I'm going to switch gears a bit and provide an overview as well as some information on how to make your organization available to cannabis businesses for those that are interested in participating in the reinvestment program. So as you can see here in this slide, the map displays the CDBG areas in Long Beach, which are the areas that nonprofits must provide services or programming to. And this also has a great deal of overlap with the $1 Million Hoods map that was just shown on the previous slide. So these are predominantly the northwest and central areas of Long Beach. And this map is also provided in the actual sign-up form for nonprofits, which we can get into details in just a second. So next slide. Thank you. So nonprofits that wish to participate can fill out the reinvestment registration form, and they will receive direct financial contributions, volunteer hours, and in-kind donations if they are able to make a partnership with a cannabis business. So if you wish to fill out this form, the cannabis businesses that are given the information from nonprofits that fill out this form, they are not required to use this list as a resource, but we decided to have it available for them in the event that they weren't sure where they wanted to partner. So we were able to get into kind of the nitty-gritty of the social of the priorities, the community priorities, and align them with the reconciliation priorities that we did a lot of outreach over the summer and through our racial reconciliation process, and we were able to find a great deal of alignment with the priorities that we would like the nonprofits to be serving in. Next slide. So if your organization is doing work in youth development, this category encompasses work that will provide youth from the ages of 0 to 24 with things like social and cognitive skill building, providing basic needs, mentorship, tutoring, and even advocacy for youth are all eligible activities. And for the next one is violence prevention. These include services or advocacy related to trauma-informed care, crisis intervention, gang violence interruption, elder abuse prevention, gun violence prevention, intimate partner violence, and sexual violence. And so this is not an exhaustive list because violence prevention is a really broad category. So if you provide work in an area that isn't listed here, that doesn't necessarily exclude you from the program. The reentry work is meant to encompass work to help those that were formerly incarcerated have a smooth transition back into the community, and that can be through providing services or advocacy related to job training and placement, access to safe and adequate housing, peer support, and other basic needs. And lastly, the last program priority area is economic inclusion, which has a wide variety of eligible activities. But to name just a few, this would include organizations that are helping with small business assistance, support to entrepreneurs, and things like that. So this is a lot to remember through these different priority areas. So don't worry, it's all listed in the registration form as well. So if after all this you're interested in registering, you will need the following information on this slide to fill out the nonprofit registration form. And as a reminder, filling out this form does not guarantee that cannabis businesses will reach out, but it does ensure that your organization will be able to provide the information that will be passed on to cannabis businesses. And lastly, and this is important, nonprofits are responsible for being aware of and compliant with the federal regulations around accepting cannabis funds. Which, this is confusing. Luckily, the nonprofit partnership has made technical assistance available to the organizations that might need it. Thank you. Next slide. And so this is just the timeline because this program has not officially launched yet. We are currently working on releasing the program requirements and orientations for the nonprofits, which we are here today for that, as well as the cannabis businesses. And in December, we will collect all of the plans from the cannabis businesses, hopefully have them reviewed and approved by mid-January. And through January and through December of 2021, the cannabis businesses will work on implementing the plans that they submitted to us. And in December of 2021, we will have our first annual report, which will include documentation along with the plan renewal for the next year. And that is it. We will be available for any questions.
Yeah, I've already seen some good questions come up through the Q&A, and I've tried to answer them to the best of my ability. Would love to be able to answer any questions now. I think, for us, we're trying to do the best we can given some of the parameters we have. And I think in an ideal world, we would have loved to be able to make direct grants to community-based organizations. Unfortunately, we're not administering the cannabis tax revenue, but we are, working to make this kind of a corporate social responsibility or community benefits type program where the businesses can directly invest in the communities most impacted by the war on drugs. And we're really just here to try to provide matchmaking services, if you will, and help make sure that these resources are going into the communities that have been most harmed by the war on drugs.
So we actually do have a couple of questions, and I know a few of them were asked and answered within already. So I'm actually going to ask those as well for the sake of everybody that's watching as well. So we'll just kind of jump in and see how we go. Can you, and I'll ask some of the ones that are in here, do you know how many cannabis businesses are located in Long Beach?
That is a good question. I don't have the number off the top of my head. I can certainly get it for you. I want to say it's less than 100, but more than 50. And that includes, because we do have a cap on the number of dispensaries, but there's also manufacturing, cultivation, packaging, all kinds of different types of businesses. And so I want to say the target was around 75, but there have been a lot of factors that have affected that. So I can certainly circle back with a more accurate number for you all.
Appreciate that. And that next question is related. Is the city limiting the number of marijuana businesses through this program?
So there is a limit to the number of dispensaries, and that was set by a vote of the people that set that cap. There is not a limit on other types of businesses. And in fact, we're working to lower the barriers to entry for some certain types of businesses to be able to have shared locations so that more businesses could co-locate together. Because one of the biggest barriers for these businesses in starting is the fact that land is so expensive and that there's a lot of requirements about where a cannabis business can locate within certain proximity to schools and other sensitive sites. So there is not technically a cap in the number of businesses. And in fact, they're exploring other opportunities such as delivery services that could also provide for more business type opportunities.
Yeah. One of the questions came in, actually was emailed to us earlier, so I'll ask this one. My organization trains parents and youth on leadership development, supporting the whole family unit. We are trying to increase youth leadership in our community overall. Would we qualify under these guidelines?
I believe so. Yeah, under the youth development one, I absolutely think so. And I also, both Shreya and I have strong public health backgrounds. And so I would also offer that I would see that as a violence prevention strategy as well, because we know that when youth and families are strong and thriving, that they're less likely to be either victims or perpetrators of violence.
And then how will the city help impact employment opportunities for cannabis? Is there an application for that?
That is a great question. So part of the cannabis equity overall policy is that 40% of the hours that are worked by cannabis businesses have to be done by what we call equity applicants. And so similar to how Shreya showed the map of the community development block grant, CDBG areas, there's a certain definition for cannabis equity applicant, and 40% of the work hours performed by cannabis businesses have to be done by those folks. And so the city is in the process of setting up a payroll tracking system so that we can hold businesses accountable to that, because there isn't a very easy way for us to measure and hold accountable businesses to that policy. So that is in the works. And I can drop a link to the application in the chat. One other thing I would say is that our workforce development arm has been helping to train candidates, and they basically provide a registry to cannabis businesses when they're looking to hire of people who are trained and certified in cannabis skills that are needed through our workforce development program.
Thank you. And Katie, if you could send that over to us, we don't have chat on this one, but we'll make sure to send it out in an email in addition to all the other links that we're talking about today. We'll send those out in a follow-up email to everybody. Can you tell us what the limit is for the grant award per nonprofit?
So there's not a limit. We are asking that the cannabis businesses donate 1% of their gross annual receipts, which it varies depending on the size of the business. And so it's a minimum that we're asking in order to kind of meet the standard, which again can really vary. So we know that based on previous gross annual receipts, it was somewhere between $500,000 and about $1 million that we would anticipate if all businesses were to give 1%. Now, I do know that there have been new businesses that open. Some businesses are doing really well. Given COVID quarantine, their business is booming. And so that number may also increase, thus increasing the resources that we would expect to be reinvested into communities.
Thank you. And then to some of the questions, and for those of you, if you're looking at the Q&A, you may be able to read these as well, but I wanted to make sure that we're including them in the verbal webinar. How will we know if we are on the approved organizations list if we fill out the registration form?
So Shreya and I will be working to review all of the applications or all of the forms that are filled out. And as soon as we do approve those, we'll be keeping a running list on our website so that when a business is developing their plan, they will have access to that list. And that list will be publicly available. And we don't necessarily have a deadline by which you need to get on it. We anticipate that we'll try to front load and get as many CBOs or community-based orgs on it now as possible so that we can provide that list to the businesses for them to develop their plans by the end of the year. But we would also like to make sure that new organizations or organizations that hear about this for the first time can continue to get on the list on an ongoing basis.
And sort of tangentially related to that, can the businesses spread their donation across several organizations?
Absolutely. So a business could say, we want to donate $10,000 here, $5,000 here, and that would just be written into their plan. And then our role is to approve that plan and then hold them accountable to meeting that plan. And so we will be publishing an annual report to City Council with the plans that have been created and followed through. And so we'll be asking each of the businesses for documentation that they're meeting those plans.
Great. Another question that came into us, can nonprofits propose new programs or projects, or is it to only fund ongoing work? There's one that is considering collaborating with others and would like to submit a proposal for something like this, but they didn't know if it was for new projects.
Yeah, so having worked for the health department and having written a lot of grants and having known what a pain in the neck they can be, we want to make this as easy for nonprofits as possible. So it can fund new projects, it can fund existing work, it could fund whatever. We're not tying a budget to this requirement because we know that the biggest need for nonprofits is operating costs, keeping the lights on. Like we know all nonprofits are really struggling, especially to serve the community needs that are out there. And so we want to make it as easy and flexible as possible. So however you feel like you can present a compelling organization that a cannabis business would be wanting to support, I think we would encourage you to get creative and think about how you can do that.
Nice. And always what we think about, what are the reporting requirements for awarded funds?
Yeah, so again, we want to put the onus on the businesses. They're the ones who have to develop the plans, follow through with the plans, and then report on the plans. The onus to the nonprofits would be to provide any documentation that's needed for the businesses to submit. So they might ask you for a letter, they might need to turn in a receipt or something for that. And so we really want to make it as easy as possible for the community-based organizations by having minimal reporting requirements on your end. It's the responsibility of the business at the end of the day to maintain their business license and do cannabis work in Long Beach.
We appreciate that consideration. Will it be an issue if my organization serves all zip codes in Long Beach, not just the ones that are identified as eligible?
That's a really good question because we know a lot of nonprofits serve outside that service area. And absolutely, I think that we would certainly accept an organization that serves all of Long Beach. However, we would want on the business's cannabis reinvestment plan to know how they're reinvesting in the communities that have been directly impacted by the war on drugs. So there would need to be some clarification of how there's focused resources in those areas.
And I think you covered this a bit in the presentation already, but I do want to just highlight it. How is the city going to ensure that the equity lens is part of the way that investments are made in the city, especially for those communities that are highly impacted by drug use?
Good question. I think we're trying to approach this from a few different angles. One, trying to minimize the barriers for nonprofits, because we understand that nonprofits are often run by and serving people of color and highly disadvantaged communities. So to the extent that we can support that through our partnership with the nonprofit partnership, that's one way we're trying to minimize that. Second, we have not been, because we live in a state where Prop 209 is still a reality, and as of last night, it appears that it will continue to be a reality. This program is race neutral because that is state law. However, we have proxies for that, and so using the CDBG map, the map that highlighted the blue neighborhoods in North, Central, and West Long Beach is another way we're trying to ensure that we're investing in the communities most impacted by the war on drugs. And there was a third one that was in my head, and the third one. As Shreya mentioned, I don't think we spend a lot of time talking about this, but over the summer following the death or the killing of George Floyd, we went through a really intense listening series with the community, really trying to center, amplify Black voices and listen to the harm that's been caused by government, by law enforcement, and by many different systems that have perpetuated racism. And so that's how we really narrowed down the focus areas of youth development, reentry, violence prevention, and economic inclusion.
Thank you. And I know this one was asked and then answered in the text, but I'm going to ask it verbally as well. Mm-hmm. Just a shout out, thank you very much for trying to make this easy for us. So you got a thank you in there. I like that. Will this funding be available next year too? We want to launch a new program and are thinking about availability of funding for next year or 2 years.
Yeah, this will be an annual program. So businesses are required from this point moving forward to submit an annual plan and annual reports indicating how they're reinvesting into communities based on the war on drugs. So yes, it will be an ongoing program, although there's no way for us to know or to ensure that the businesses will continue to support the same organization year after year. And so this is really where we would lean on the businesses and the nonprofits to have a strong relationship, open lines of communication, and in the same way that you court your donors and your funders, you court them and show them all the good work that they're supporting.
And then this one, I am with a church that works in the communities. Will churches and other religious organizations be eligible as well?
So the only kind of specification is that you're a 501c3. And so if you show that you have 501c3 status and that you meet all of the other criteria for the neighborhood served and the services that you provide, then the religious connection is fine. Okay.
I think if anybody has more questions, we're flying through these. You have like answers coming out. This is fantastic. The economic, let's see, we're getting more questions in here. Is the economic reinvestment only for jobs for youth? We serve up to years of 26 and above. So is it exclusive to that?
No, I wouldn't say it's 20. We put that because that's the age for the city's forthcoming youth and emerging adult strategic plan. But again, I think the way that we've really considered these categories is to be more expansive than exclusive. And so to the extent that employing young adults is also a violence prevention strategy or an economic inclusion strategy, I think there's multiple ways to get at meeting what we're looking for in the reinvestment program.
Great. I think we're flying through. If anybody has further questions, please let us know. I know Michelle Byerly rejoined us here. If you wanted to talk a little bit about how we can support nonprofits or some other funding opportunities that are available out there, because we never waste an opportunity to give more information to all of you. So I'm going to leave it open for a few more minutes. If you have more questions, please feel free and pop those in. But I know Michelle had a couple of things she wanted to cover as well with us today. Michelle? Uh-oh. She may be frozen.
She was chopping up a little bit earlier.
A little bit, yeah. The internet was
yes, so
there we go. Okay.
Thank you. That information was great, and thank you for trying. Oh, can you hear me?
The internet is very spotty on your end, Michelle. That's okay. That's all right. We'll make this work.
Now?
Coming up a little bit, but we have a couple more questions. So let's go ahead and try that. Remind us where we get the application. We will certainly send out the link for the application, but I'm more than happy to. Yes. Oh yeah, Carolina has that there, and we will certainly send out the link for the application with the follow-up email as well. And you can always find it on the city's website. Let's see. Jobs for all. Who do we contact at City Hall if we have more questions about this program?
We would be your go-to people for answering any other questions. And there's certainly things that we can't answer related to business licensing, but we certainly can point you in the right direction if there's more questions related to the cannabis business themselves.
And thank you so much.
Provide the email address in there in case anybody else wants to jot that down. So I'll be happy.
Thank you for that, Shreya. I was just going to mention that for those of you that are following along, if you want to pop into that Q&A portion and you look at the answered questions, that last question down at the bottom, Shreya did provide her direct email address if you have any follow-up questions as well on this. And we'll include that with the follow-up email as well to everybody. All right. Any further information? I'm going to give a few more minutes here because questions do appear to be coming in. Let's see. What is the program website? Well, let's go ahead and take a look and pop those up. My goodness. There's so many different websites that are on my screen right now. So I'm like, uh-oh. But we can certainly pop that up for you so that you can take a look at them as well. Let's see. Hopefully I'm pulling up the right one and you can all see my screen here. This is the Cannabis Equity website. Hopefully everybody can see that of the Health and Human Services. Am I on the right page, ladies? Katie?
Yes, you are.
Okay, yep. Perfect. I'm just gonna start clicking my links here. So if you wanted to learn more about the program, you can certainly go to this website. You'll see that the categories that they discussed are listed here. Also, if you're interested in learning more about the Community Reinvestment Plan rules and procedures, it's a quick link over to that. And it pulls up this PDF with the purpose, with the scope, amendment definitions. It's very, very clear. In fact, we were reading it earlier today. It is written very clearly. You got a shout out for that as well. Just kind of like, wow, it's really easy to understand. For those, the map and the tracks that they were talking about, this is that the map that she was discussing for those available areas. But again, don't, if you work outside of those areas, they really want to see how it impacts those particular areas, but also organizations that work outside those areas would be eligible. Let me go back to that website here. Further down is the form. So if you are interested in applying to be considered as a partnering business, it's a direct link over to that form. And it is a very easy form, simple fields. And then again, if you wanted to learn more about it, even from this form, if you're sending this out to your team, you can click over here back to that reinvestment program website right there. And then they have further down the map. So all the information that you need, and then even further down, further information, and right here, this is what you'll want to make sure that you are agreeing to all of the rules and regulations that are within this particular plan. So you have, again, there's only maybe about, how many questions, 10? Even if that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 10 questions there, but all very basic questions, your organization name, email address, mission, the essential information that we know that you always have available to you. So it should be a fairly easy process. I'm going to stop my screen here because I think we have another question that came in.
Christina, I saw someone was unable to put their website in the form, so we'll make sure to fix that. And we can follow up with anybody who has already submitted a form that wasn't able to get their website in there to make sure we get that.
Thank you for noticing that. Appreciate that. Any estimate on when the list will be created and will it be hosted on the same site?
Yeah, it will certainly be hosted on the same site. We'll pop in the link. It will be available as soon as we finalize the template for the cannabis businesses. And And similar to how we've been trying to work with the nonprofit partnership and get feedback, we're also working with them to get feedback and meeting with them next week to kind of go over the final last nuts and bolts. So we hope to have it all done within a week or two.
Perfect. And I think, if you have any further questions, please feel free and pop them into that Q&A. I believe we have Carolina Casada, who's joined us as well from TNP. Oh, here we go. One more question. If we serve in more areas than one, should we provide info in both or limit to one area? What is your suggestion there?
I would provide as much information as you think would be appealing. So I think it would be good to, if you serve both youth and you also do violence prevention, I would describe both of those areas of your work because we never know what the nonprofit or what the cannabis businesses will be interested in investing in. So I would also I think we did put a character limit on it because we want to keep it around a half-page single space. Any more than that, truthfully, folks won't keep reading for very long. So we want to make sure it's concise, to the point, and so that you can really have a compelling program that can be supported through this.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Katie and Shreya. And Carolina, I know that you have some information you wanted to share out with our attendees today. So
yeah, thank you, Christina. I think information is very well aligned. And thanks again, Katie and Shreya. Thank you. We're so honored to partner with you on this. I just want to take a quick minute to let all of the nonprofits viewing this call today know that there are still funding opportunities through the City of Long Beach that are open. And we really, really would like to encourage you to look at those. And it seems like, Christina, we'll have a follow-up email with all sorts of different links, but a couple just to keep on your radar in case they are not already there is the City of Long Beach CARES Act Nonprofit Relief Grant, which will be closing this Friday around midnight. So we urge you to take a look at that opportunity. And there's also the City of Long Beach CARES COVID Youth Leadership Services opportunity available through Planet Bids. We will also be sharing with you all a link to a form that we've put together. So if any organizations are looking for any kind of capacity building support, or technical support as you complete these applications, you have some questions, there we go. Christina has a form up. And we're also going to add, if there are any quick questions that we can answer or maybe forward on to our team here at the City of Long Beach around the cannabis reinvestment, we are happy to take any kind of inquiries or questions as well. So happy to provide that. Thank you, Christina.
I also just saw, to add to what Carolina was saying, I just saw that the Youth Services CARES Act funding RFP was open today as well.
So you heard it here. There's plenty of funding out there. Go out, apply, read up on it. And also do let us know here at TNP if we can provide some help for you with any of those applications. We will send out a follow-up email with all of this information, including the video link and the slides, as well as the other links that we talked about in terms of the funding and for the reinvestment program. I don't see any further questions, but if anybody has any, I'm going to leave it open for just another minute. Katie and Shreya, thank you both so much for putting this together for us today and for sharing out this information. We really are looking forward to this program and looking forward to the wonderful things that it'll provide. So I think from all of us at TNP and on behalf of the City of Long Beach, we appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.